and the Antichrist, chapter 11, titled The Pope's Roman Catholic Monastery in Syria Irresponsible for Muhammad's Prophethood. The Christ and the Antichrist, chapter 11, from verse 1. In the book Catholicism, an Introduction by the publishers Hodder Sutton, it says, among the civil administrators of the Roman city from 572 to 574 was Gregory, who came of a family that had already provided 2 popes. Gregory abandoned all worldly goods on the death of his father and adopted the new monastic style of life. This has been growing in influence all across the Catholic Church in imitation of the Desert Fathers, hermits, and ascetics such as St. Anthony, who from the 3rd century onwards dedicated their lives to prayer and had manual labor in loosely knit communities in the Egyptian desert. Their example inspired others like Benedict of Nursia, whose rule led to the foundation of monasteries in Italy and eventually throughout Europe. These institutions housed men following regimented celibate lives of prayer, service, and learning, and earned widespread public respect. Firstly, loyal to the papacy, the new generation of monks were the key figures in extending the Pope's authority. This is remarkable indeed. So these monasteries and the monks that dwelt therein were fiercely loyal to the authority of the popes. The popes were also their heads, and they in turn were the key figures that helped extend the rule of the popes to the 4 corners of the earth. According to the book Catholicism, an Introduction by the publishers Hodder Sutton, Gregory was summoned out of his monastery in 590 and elected by popular acclaim of Roman citizens as the new pope. We have another testimony from John Boker in his book titled The Message and the Book, which will help shed more light for us on this reality that the monks and their monasteries were under the leadership of the Roman Catholic popes. John Boker wrote in his book, the underlying word monk comes from the Greek monos, alone, and monachos, solitary, and the earliest forms of monasticism seem to have come from people known as anachorets or hermits, who perhaps in the imitation of Jesus, who began his ministry with a withdrawal in the desert, Matthew 4, 1-11, Luke 4, 1-13. But even those early hermits were related to the communities which gave them support and for which they prayed. There is no village or town in Egypt or Tibet that is not surrounded by hermitages, Greek monasteria, as though by walls, and the people secure on the prayers of the monks as if on God. The purpose of the desert was not the absence of people, but the presence of God, says John Boker in his book. John Boker went on to tell us, gradually the solitaries were gathered into communities, and at the beginning of the 4th century, Ptolemaios, an Egyptian, began to impose on them a common rule of life. That led to Basik the Great, emphasizing the importance of life in communities when he responded to questions about monasticism. The questions and answers were gathered into a work known as the Assertion, commonly referred to as the Rule of Basil. There was an earlier form known as the short Asceticon. By the 6th century, Asceticon was expanded by the addition of Regulae Morales or Moralia and some other works. The rules are founded on Basil's belief that the great human good is to live in the constant praise of thanksgiving for the gifts of life and creation. Basil's rule became the foundation of subsequent rules governing monastic communities in the Eastern Church as also in the Western Church through the work of John Cassien in the Institutes and Conferences. Basil was one of Greek thinkers and theologians known as the Cappadocian Fathers. They lie at the root not just of Christian monasticism, but also of the way in which prayer relates to the unknowability of God. He wrote Divinis Nominibus, as monasticism took root in the church, both east and west. Many monastic rules were written incorporating the work particularly of Augustine and John Cassian. In the Western Church, at least 30 rules were written between 400 and 700 CE. In the Western Church, at least 30 rules were written between 400 and 700 CE. Again, sir. Of this, the most important by far was the rule of Benedict, which, as Bernard McGinn has put it, proved decisive for the future of monasticism. The rule of Benedict is the single most important document in the history of Western monasticism and arguably the most significant text from the whole late antique period. During 12 centuries, it has been the subject of such intense study and annotation that it may be said to have attained a position that is almost scriptural in the Catholic tradition. It proved decisive because for about 600 years, the basis of monastic life in the Western Church in Europe, with the exception of the church in Celtic areas. David Knowles opened his monastic order in England with a chapter entitled The Rule of St. Benedict. For 600 years, in Italy and the countries of Europe, north and west of Italy, with the important exception of Celtic civilization, monastic life based on the rule of St. Benedict was everywhere the norm and exercised from time to time a paramount influence on the spiritual, intellectual, liturgical, and apostolical life of the Western Church. In other words, during these centuries, the only type of religious life available in the countries concerned was monastic, and the only monastic code was the rule of St. Benedict. During the ensuing centuries, other orders were founded based on the rule of St. Benedict, however much it was adopted, notably the Cistercians and the Cluniacs, writes John Boker. As we have seen from the above evidence, monasteries with their monks were a part of the Roman Church, and they were also vital tools in helping the popes extend their power and reign to the four corners of the earth. Now that we have established this fact, let us proceed to look at the story of Muhammad's second coming, how he was brought into office by the Pope's monastery in Syria. Here is the account of how Bahira, the Roman Catholic monk, brought Muhammad into office to oppose the Christ, his word, and his body, the church. This account of events can be found in the works of all the early Muslim historians such as Ibn Hisham, Ibn Sa'id, and Tabari, whose versions differ in some details. However, they all agree that Muhammad was brought into office by the Roman Catholic Bahira when he was either 9 or 12 years old. The story goes as follows, that one day when Muhammad was 9 or 12 years old, that he was in the town of Basra in Syria during his travel with a Meccan caravan, accompanying his uncle Abu Talib. When the caravan was passing by his cell, he invited the merchants to a feast. They accepted the invitation, leaving the boy to guard the camel. However, Bahira, the Roman Catholic monk, insisted that everyone in the caravan should come in. Then suddenly, a miraculous occurrence indicated to the monk that Muhammad was to become their prophet. According to another version of the story, Bahira found a mark on Muhammad's back which indicated to him that Muhammad was to be their prophet. Other variants of the story say that it was a miraculous movement of a cloud or an unusual behavior of a branch of a tree that kept shadowing Muhammad regardless of the time of the day. Despite all the variations of this story, one thing that they all agree on is that Muhammad's prophethood was announced to him and his uncle, first and foremost by the Roman Catholic monk Bahira. The most authentic version of this revelation can be found on IslamicLandmarks.com. From IslamicLandmarks.com, it says with regards to the Antichrist's second coming, when Muhammad was about 12 years old, he accompanied his uncle Abu Talib on a trade journey to Syria in a place called Basra. A very interesting incident took place, which caused Abu Talib to return Muhammad to Mecca. On their trade journey, they met a Roman Catholic monk by the name of Bahira, who lived a simple life in a monastery. He had very simple provisions and lived a harsh life, surviving on bare essentials. He was looking outside and saw a caravan approaching. His residence was on the main caravan route, and he regularly saw caravans passing by carrying different goods destined to be sold in the great markets of Syria. He noticed that this caravan was different. There was something special about it. He decided to invite the people to a meal and found out more. Bahira sent a message to the caravan that his hospitality was extended to all the members of the caravan. The caravan traders accepted the invitation and arrived at the monk's place. When they arrived, Bahira searched their faces looking for something. He said that I offered my hospitality to everyone. Was there anyone left behind? They said that they had left a young boy called Muhammad to look after the camels. Bahira insisted that they send someone to get Muhammad and bring him to the entertainment. When Bahira saw the face of Muhammad, he was delighted, for he was aware from the scriptures of the arrival of a mighty prophet, and he could see the signs on the young boy. After the food, Bahira approached Abu Talib, saying that Muhammad would be a great prophet one day. He said that when he had seen the caravan in the distance, there was a cloud hanging over them, which was shading them from the great heat of the desert. When the caravan had stopped under a tree, the cloud had also stopped above them. Bahira said that he had seen the stones and the trees prostrating to Muhammad as Muhammad had been walking by, that they only do this for a prophet of Allah. Then he looked at Muhammad's back and noticed the seal of the prophets, which was an oval shape protruding just below Muhammad's shoulder blade. He said that this was one of the signs of a great prophet to come that was taught to them in their books. Bahira said, "This is the master of all humans. Allah will send him with a message which would be a mercy to all humans." Bahira advised that Muhammad should be taken back to Mecca at once. If the Jews found out about Muhammad, they would try to kill him. Abu Talib took the advice of this wild old Roman Catholic monk and sent Muhammad back with some of the guides, writes IslamicLandmarks.com. This revelation from IslamicLandmarks.com is the fulfillment of the prophecy given to the church by the Christ in the book of his revelation from the Bible. The Apostle John wrote in Revelation 13:11-12, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon, and he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed." This second beast is none other than Muhammad, who came out of the cave in the earth at Arabia. The Antichrist also has 2 horns as a lamb. These 2 horns refer to the 2 major types of Islam. Horn in scripture language refers to power or kings. Thus, these 2 horns are the strengths of Muhammad, and they refer to the 2 major types of the Muslims, the Sunnis and the Shiites. The Apostle John also said that Muhammad spoke as a dragon. In Revelation 12:9, the dragon is called the serpent, the devil, and Satan. For Muhammad to speak as a devil means that he spoke for and like the devil. In other words, his words were not his, but the words of Satan and the first beast from the book of Revelation 13, of whom he came to exercise all his power. In other words, the Quran is the words of Rome, aka the popes, and Satan, the dragon. The Apostle John also said that Muhammad, who is the second beast in the book of Revelation 13, will come and exercise all power and ability of the first beast, who is the Bishop of Rome. This is exactly what transpired, as we have seen. The Antichrist was brought into office by the agents of the Bishop of Rome to help extend the reign of the popes. The Bishop of Rome refers to the office of the popes. The Apostle John then went on to say that Rome, aka the popes, received a deadly wound which should have caused her to perish. This deadly wound which the bishops of Rome received is the reformation of the church by the Spirit of Christ in Martin Luther and Co. in the 15th century. The Reformation led to the exposure and condemning of the Roman Catholic Church. It also led to the abolishing and the redefining of many laws and teachings that were brought in